It was one of those dark Los Angeles nights. A black void had opened up in the heart of the city. The city lights were twinkling like stars in the sky, and the shadows reflected on the streets were intertwined. Will Smith got into his private limousine alone after leaving the premiere of his latest film. He was smiling for the cameras and posing for magazines, but as soon as the door closed, his face froze. His eyes darted to the mirror inside the limousine, but the mirror reflected his movement with a delay. He straightened his fingers, but the reflection suddenly waved a different gesture. The radio inside the limousine began to speak. The announcer's voice sounded inverted. "Los Angeles is going to lose a star tonight?" Will looked up at the driver and saw that the driver was not in his seat. The steering wheel was steering by itself. The limousine was slowly moving towards the darkness of the city. Every time Will looked back, the shadows seemed to be following him. Each shadow was a little bigger, a little more transparent. Will whispered under his breath, "It's just tiredness. If I just lay down and rest until morning, it will pass." His voice answered like a reflection from himself. Will's house in Beverly Hills, large and dark, looked like a cold castle. The door was slightly open. Will always double-locked the door to the house, considering the possibility of theft. But this time he didn't. Will entered, and at that moment the lights began to flicker. The posters of his movies on the walls moved. On one of the posters, young Will smiled, but his eyes moved. It was as if Will himself was watching him. Footsteps could be heard, but he was the only one in the house. With each step, Will could hear his heart beating. It felt like cold air was flowing through the room, and black shadows were moving on the walls. Will said, "This could just be a dream," but his voice was shaking. The house had a movie theater. On the table in the movie theater was a VHS tape. There was handwriting on it, and it read, "Roles that don't belong to you." Will started playing the tape with a single click. Suddenly, he saw his own face on the screen, but there was one difference. His eyes were pitch black, his face was ice cold and lifeless. The Will in the image was standing alone in the middle of the studio. He looked into the camera and said, "You took my place, now it's my turn." Suddenly, the screen went black. Will felt a breath coming from behind him. Will looked back. No one was there, but the breath was getting closer and closer, and the sound seemed to get closer with every step. The room was getting smaller and smaller. The ceiling was getting lower and lower. Will clutched his heart, but it felt as if this heart was beating for someone else. Will jumped up and ran into the street. The streets were foggy, empty, and very crooked. Those narrow streets seemed to swallow him up. He descended into an old subway entrance that not many people used. A closed tunnel that hadn't been used for years. On the walls were red inscriptions that seemed to be written in blood. "Roles pay in blood." In the tunnel, Will caught sight of an old movie projector. Images projected onto the wall. Movies he hadn't acted in, each starring Will Smith. But each movie ended in death. Blood, screams, agony. Will tried to bend his knees, but his feet felt as heavy as dirt. It was as if the tunnel was about to swallow him up. With every step, the walls made noises. Every shadow stared at his face. Towards the end of the tunnel, a light began to appear, and suddenly a figure appeared. It was Will Smith. He showed his face in the light, but his eyes were dark as night, his lips were cracked, and he was cold as the harshest day of winter. "I am all your accumulated fears, all the roles you haven't played. I am everything you have buried all your roles in." Will screamed, "You are not real." The second fear smiled. "The only thing real in Los Angeles is fear." The tunnel closed. Will retreated. Every step, every breath began to feel heavier and more terrifying. The walls of the tunnel began to open again. Will saw the scenes of his life dedicated to him. Interviews, applause, golden statues. But every applause that had cheered him turned into a scream. Every laugh turned into a deep pain. "When they love you, they eat you, and you let them," the second Will said. The second Will stretched out his hand. His fingers were like ice. Will tried to grab it, but he couldn't hold it. Each step made him more afraid. It was as if Los Angeles itself had taken him prisoner. Will began to scream. The sound enveloped the city, but the scream swallowed his own voice. Will slowly opened his eyes and realized he was home. The sun was rising slowly. Everything seemed peaceful. Will thought to himself, it was a dream. He got up and turned on the TV. The news was on. The presenter was saying, a mysterious death was recorded today at the home of the famous actor Will Smith. The incident took place in Los Angeles. Will froze when he heard the news. A photo appeared on the screen. It was Will himself, but his eyes and face were different. It was as if the city had painted the darkness inside him. Will ran to the mirror, but he was not in the mirror. The other Will emerged from the mirror. This time it was real, alive. I am here now, and you are just a memory. Will punched the mirror. The glasses shattered. Each glass had a different face of Will. None of them asked for help. The glasses seemed to scream. Every sound tore Will's soul apart. The fear inside him deepened.